about chloroplasts, which have a double membrane around the outside, an inner and outer membrane. So this is known as the envelope. And then, of course, you've got your stacks of grana made of thylakoid membranes. And this, what I'm drawing now, is an intergranal lamellae, which is just basically an extended thylakoid membrane across the chloroplast. And so it goes on. And another granum, etc. So those are the grana. That's a granum. This is a thylakoid membrane. And this is an intergranal lamella. So this is the stroma here, and that's the site of the light independent stage of photosynthesis, which we will be doing soon. But the area we're interested in at the moment is this part here, which is the thylakoid membrane. Because we're going to be looking at the light dependent stage of photosynthesis. So if you took that membrane that I just circled then, and what you have is, this is the membrane, and embedded in it are photosystems. Now photosystems look a little bit like shuttlecocks. So let's have a look here. Here's another photosystem. And then what looks a little bit like Santa's boots, I always say, are the ATP synthases, where ATP is made. And at the bottom here you've got another side of the thylakoid, and then here is the intermembrane space. And this is the stroma. So these here, this one here is photosystem 2, and this is photosystem 1. And they're only that way round because photosystem 1 was discovered before photosystem 2. So like I said, they look a little bit like shuttlecocks. And what they've got is, in the middle here is the reaction centre, and that has chlorophyll A in it. But there are also accessory pigments, which are orange and bluey colours. So we've got orange, and we've got bluey greens in there as well. Now the bluey green ones are chlorophyll B. And these are the carotenoids. Carotenoids, which are made up of xanthophyll and carotene. Now, these together are known as accessory pigments. Means they help the main chlorophyll A, which is in the reaction centre. So what happens is, as light hits the photosystem, the energy is collected with these accessory pigments and it's passed down into the reaction centre. So it eventually passes from pigment to pigment and then into the reaction centre. And each of the accessory pigments, they're all photosynthetic pigments that just absorb sunlight energy at different wavelengths. And so because they all absorb light at different wavelengths, it means that the photosystem is as efficient as possible at receiving light energy down into this reaction centre, which contains your chlorophyll A. All right. So it is light energy, as we know, that drives this part, which is called the light dependent stage. And that is why we call it the light dependent stage, because it's dependent on the light. It needs the light energy for it to work. So let's start again and just focus on those photosystems and the ATP synthase. So again, here we go. Photosystem 2, photosystem 1, Santa's boots. Whoops, not drawn quite so well. And they're all embedded in the membrane of the thylakoid. Right, proteins are allowing them to embed. And there's also in here electron carriers, which carry electrons, as you'll soon see. So the idea is light comes in to the photosystem. And here's photosystem 2. So that's the reaction centre, and there's photosystem 1. And what happens is that energy is passed along the accessory pigments into the reaction centre. And it hits the magnesium in the chlorophyll A in the reaction centre. And this excites an electron. And so this exciting of the electron, so the electron basically, the electron is excited to a higher level, and it's emitted from the chlorophyll molecule, which is known as photoactivation. So basically this electron here goes whee, and it's all excited, and it's collected by an electron acceptor. And this electron acceptor, so it doesn't go whizzing off, it gets collected by this electron acceptor, and then the electron acceptor passes this electron to the next electron acceptor or carrier, and that passes the electron to the next electron acceptor and to the next one. And what it does is each time it gets passed on, it releases a little bit of energy. And this allows, so remember this is the stroma here, this allows hydrogen ions to be pumped through the membrane, thylakoid membrane, into the intermembrane space. Now that means that we build up a higher concentration of protons on the inside the intermembrane space, causing an electrochemical gradient. Now that means that those protons naturally want to diffuse out of the intermembrane space down their electrochemical gradient. So what they do is they can actually pass through the ATP synthase. They go through the channel of the ATP synthase. And as they do so, they cause ADP and inorganic phosphate to join together to make ATP. So they are the driving force to produce ATP. And that ATP can now go off to the light independent reaction, or the light independent stage. Because the whole point of the light dependent stage is to make ATP and reduced NADP. So the electrons are passed along to photosystem 1. And what happens now is light comes in there and it causes the electron to be excited again. Whee! Okay. Now, what can happen is that electron can either go off and join on to NADP with hydrogens, with proton and another electron. And what happens, that will then produce reduced NADP. So ATP is being produced over here, and NADP is produced, reduced NADP is produced at the end. And this is known as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Because what it's done is it's produced the ATP and then it's gone off to reduce the NADP. So the light absorbed, passing the reaction centre, excites the electron, passes the electron down the electron carriers, and then passes the electron into photosystem 1, which the electrons are excited again from photosystem 1, and we go off to produce reduced NADP. Now that means that photosystem 2 has been left without an electron. It's lost one of its electrons. So what happens is a process called photolysis, which means that light energy from the sun splits water into a proton, so protons plus electrons plus half O2. And the waste gas produced in photosynthesis is oxygen. Now these protons can go off and join in here or to reduce the NADP along with the electrons here. But one of these electrons will go off and replace the electron from photosystem 2 so that there's enough electrons to keep getting excited and be passed along the electron transport chain, because it's transporting electrons along the chain. So one of these electrons goes off to photosystem 2, another one goes off and helps with the reduction of NADP along with the protons. Sometimes, though, there isn't enough NADP around to be reduced. We run out of that NADP. So what happens, this electron, instead of going off that way, will go off this way and rejoin over here, go to the electron acceptor and rejoins the electron transport chain. And that can keep going round and round and round, time after time after time after time, and that is known as cyclic photophosphorylation. Because the electron's being recycled, and at this stage it's just using photosystem 1. Photosystem 2 is not being used at this stage. So that's cyclic photophosphorylation. But if there's plenty of NADP around, it will go off on non-cyclic photophosphorylation to produce the reduced NADP. Now that electron, when you've got photosystem 2 and photosystem 1, and the electron going up there and then getting to the acceptor, pass down carriers into photosystem 1 and being excited again, is sometimes known as a Z scheme, because if you look at it on its side, it looks like a Z. So that's known as a Z scheme, and that is the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. But the cyclic one is when the electron goes round, joins there again, gets excited for photosystem 1, gets caught by electron acceptor, passed down the electron transport chain and keeps going round, producing this ATP, and that is your cyclic photophosphorylation. So the whole point of this light-dependent reaction, LDR, light-dependent reaction, is to produce that ATP from photophosphorylation and to produce that NADP, reduced NADP, which is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, NADP plus it's written as. Now we've come across this before because we mentioned it when I talked about coenzymes back in the lower sixth. And basically this reduction of the NADP means that the energy from the sun allows the hydrogen or the proton and electrons to bind to the NADP, creating the reduced NADP, so it can move this energy, the electrons and the protons, into the light independent reaction. So we've now come across the fact that we have produced the reduced NADP and the ATP, which goes into the light independent reaction. We've talked about the fact that photolysis splits the water, giving protons and electrons, and that protons with the electrons can combine with NADP, and some of the electrons go off to photosystem 2 to replace the ones that have been excited. And there we have it. The other thing I just want to mention is when we've got our photosystem 2 and our photosystem 1, the chlorophyll in photosystem 1 is chlorophyll A, but it's also known as P680 because its maximum absorption of light is at 680, the wavelength of 680, whereas this one is P700 because the maximum wavelength of light is around the 700. Right, I think that is everything you need to know, and it's a good idea to get that down onto a poster so it is put into a diagrammatic form before going on to the light dependent reaction.